Good afternoon. Welcome to TNC Radio.live. This is the Truckers Network Radio Show. And now here's your host, Shelley Johnson.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. Yes, this is the Truckers Network Radio Show on TNC Radio.live, where we offer the news, information, traffic, weather, sports, and entertainment our commercial drivers want and need. Our drivers work really hard, and they need to be appreciated for all that hard work. A recent poll conducted by Trucking Moves America Forward found that 97% of Americans feel the trucking industry is important to our economy. 96% of respondents said that they felt truck drivers were essential to keeping our economy rolling. The poll registers the highest opinion of trucking in America ever. We wanted to learn more, so we invited Elizabeth Barna, Executive Committee member of TMAF, to discuss it. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much for having me. What exciting times we are.
Oh, this poll is really exciting. But I thought before we cover all of the results you got, maybe you could tell us a little bit about TMAF for listeners who may not be familiar with the organization.
Sure. Trucking Moves America Forward. We are actually moving into our 9th year of existence. We're still in 8, but quickly by the end, the end of the year is coming shortly. And it was really formed as an industry-wide image movement. TMAF was born to have a better awareness of what the trucking industry is and a better perception of the people who work in the industry. When we first started, we really had to build pride within the trucking industry. You would talk to people and say, what do you do? And they'd say, oh, I'm just a truck driver. Or, I just do dispatch, or I work in trucking. And that's something to be proud of and something that should be celebrated. So the first few years, we really spent talking to drivers and letting them know that, what they do affects everybody and that they should take pride in what they do. And the same with the rest of the folks in the industry. And then we started going out and really highlighting who drivers are, highlighting people who work in trucking, talking about how essential we are and how we impact everybody's daily lives. Trucking is one of those industries that delivers to every congressional district and lives in every congressional district. No other industry can say that. And so it's something that we really wanted to raise awareness of and celebrate the industry that it should be.
Well, it's so important. People take things for granted. They don't stop and think that everything in their house or their office comes by truck.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Everything is touched by a truck in one way or another. And people don't understand that. I always like to say you don't see an ocean line pulling up to the back door of the hospital or a grocery train pulling up to the back door of the grocery store. You see a truck, mm-hmm. and that's what is so important. Or an airplane, pulling straight up in front of a big box store.
That's right. I think people would be a little bit afraid of that. It's like,
here in Maryland, yesterday, a small airline hit a utility or, a tower, an electrical tower. I don't know if you guys saw that. That was just crazy.
Oh,
luckily, yeah. The pilot and the passenger, they say are going to be okay. But, you don't see that every day either.
No, you don't. They were in the cockpit there and kind of dangling for a while,
for about 7 hours.
Oh, yeah, that would be very precarious. And
right.
They knocked out power for like 86,000 people, from what I understand.
Exactly.
Jeez, that's not something that even in the movies you'd expect.
No, not at all. No, not at all. But, it's important to know that trucking is in every community and delivers. As a couple years ago, before the pandemic, we had a big snowstorm that hit the East Coast. And even here where I live, which is, the Washington, D.C. area, and we have a grocery store in every corner, the shelves weren't able to get stocked because the, roads were so bad that you couldn't get out. And I'm sure up in the Buffalo region this year, when they got hit, that probably happened up there as well. Mm-hmm. So everybody really is dependent on the trucking industry and especially the truck driver.
Absolutely. And this poll is so positive. I'm thrilled that this is one of the highest opinions people have had
It
of
is.
trucking.
Neil Newhouse, who owns Public Opinion Strategies, the polling association or organization. And Neil has been doing this for us for 8 years. And he called back in September and he said, Elizabeth, he said, we shouldn't be doing this anymore. And I was like, why? And he was like, these numbers can't get much better. He said, I've never seen an industry over 8 years make such a positive impact. And he said, you all should, this industry should have something, should be very proud of what you all are doing.
That's awesome. When you think about it, wow.
It is 22% higher. The way people perceive the trucking industry and the truck driver is 22% higher than it was 8 years ago. And that's really unheard of in polling.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, it is.
And I think a lot of that is for the past 8 years, we have been telling people, asking the industry to tell their story. How did they get into trucking? What is it like to be a truck driver? We found that the more people know somebody in the industry, the much better perception they have. Mm-hmm. And I really feel like that has a lot to do with the positive polls that we're seeing, plus all of the recognition programs that are out there, for safe driving and for 1 million miles of accident-free driving or for years of service. I think that all plays into it. And it's not just Trucking Moves America Forward or ATA doing it. It's the entire industry that's making this effort to improve the image.
Which is excellent. And
absolutely.
And when you're saying that people have an appreciation if they know of a driver, it's amazing how many people know of someone in trucking. I have interviewed celebrities and they know drivers. Everybody somewhere knows a driver.
Absolutely. It is 46%, I believe was the number. I'm just trying to pull it up, of people that when asked in this poll, how many of you actually know somebody in truck driving, which is almost half, which is pretty incredible. And we have been asking our industry to go speak to their local Rotary Club, their local Chamber of Commerce. People are always looking for speakers for their monthly meetings or their quarterly meetings. Why not be a truck driver? Take your truck, get the business community up inside of it and see what it's like to be a professional truck driver. Talk about what it takes to become a driver. Your CDL, your safety training, your medical annual medical exams, the, drug and alcohol testing. People don't realize it. We were just talking with one of our OEM partners today, and they were talking about their daughter was able to get their driver's license without actually taking the road test. Now, it was during the pandemic, but they passed everything else, the written test, but they didn't have to go out on the road with an instructor, and they got their license. And I thought to myself, my goodness gracious, no wonder the roads are so crazy these days.
Yeah.
And the difference of what it is to become a professional truck driver. I mean, the requirements and the
Yes.
testing and the skills you need are just, over the top compared to just even getting a driver's license.
Well, I have maintained that driver's training should also have a section on how you approach a semi.
Absolutely.
And making the impression of they're bigger than you are. They weigh a whole lot more than you do. You need to have respect for these drivers. Impress upon the students safety, because that's a lot of it. I mean, semis cannot stop at a dot. And I don't think most people realize that.
No, it takes two football fields in both end zones, a fully loaded tractor trailer to come to a complete stop. And that's what the ATA Show the Road program does as well. We go to high schools and junior highs and elementary schools and talk about how to show the road with large trucks. How to get into the trucking industry too, but sharing the road with them, people said, why do you go to elementary schools? And that's where, your habits and your opinions are formed. And so we've seen a big difference in, over the years that if you start that, in elementary, go through junior high and then up to high school, by the time they get their learner's permit or their driver's license, they aren't as intimidated by a large truck, and they understand and respect them.
Sure. And there's a lot to be said for that. I also think in terms of driving, commercial drivers, they're as professional as any kind of race car driver. Their skill set is just amazing. I think that they should be the ones teaching drivers training if they want to after they retire. That would change a lot of things on the road.
There are a lot of drivers that do that in their local communities. And I think you're right. You brought up race car drivers. Yes, they have a lot of skill too, but they drive on, either a wet track or a dry track most of the time, where professional drivers are hitting all kinds of weathers. And, you can go from sun to ice to snow in a matter of an hour, depending where you're driving. And so, that's something too to think about.
Absolutely. We have to go to break, Elizabeth. I can't wait to go over this poll and learn more about what people are thinking of truck drivers as well as the trucking industry. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly. You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show on tncradio.live. We're talking with Elizabeth Barna from Trucking Moves America Forward. Stay tuned for more coming up.
Drivers to help you handle this situation. When you're on the side of the road, be sure to have safety equipment, including flashers, cones, reflective triangles, and maybe even road flares to alert other drivers. Unless your truck is unsafe to be in, stay inside to avoid being out near the roadway. If you need to open your driver's side door, check before to make sure nothing is coming up the road. Do not roll your windows down if your truck is in idle. Fumes could come in through the open windows. Make sure to keep plenty of supplies in your truck in case you're stuck for a while. Check out our blog with items for emergency trucking safety equipment to have on hand. This blog on tncradio.live is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. Common mistakes truck drivers continue to make. Getting into a car wreck is a risk everyone takes when driving a vehicle. Safety's not guaranteed while driving. Although you may be alert and driving safe, others may not. Wrecks of any kind are almost always traumatic. Wrecks that include heavy-duty trucks can be even more horrific because their injuries can be more severe and life-threatening. Truck drivers go through a long, extensive training process and must pass several exams to get their CDL. Even though truck driving school prepares truckers for life on the road, there's still mistakes truckers continue to make. Speeding. There may be some instances where you're running late to get a load delivered on time, so you speed to get there. Speeding is dangerous for all drivers. Going over the speed limit is not only illegal, it's risky and can lead to injuries or even death. Avoid speeding at any time. It's better to arrive late than risking your life and others. Rollover. Truck rollovers are due to a driver taking a turn too fast, inexperience, or load size. Rollovers tend to happen when drivers get too comfortable behind the wheel and forget to take extra precautions while driving. Remember to always pay attention and be aware of what you're hauling. Tailgating. Tailgating or following too close is something every driver should avoid. Driving too close behind a vehicle is extremely dangerous for heavy-duty truck drivers due to the weight and momentum of the truck. Keep your distance while driving. There should be at least 3 seconds between each vehicle on the road. Driving while tired. Sleep is very important for the overall well-being and safety of a truck driver. Due to the long hauls, truckers rarely get the recommended 8 hours of sleep every night. Truck drivers can drive up to 11 hours a day for 7 consecutive days. Drivers who fail to follow these guidelines put their lives and others at risk. Blind spots. Semi-trucks are notorious for their blind spots. Most blind spots are due to the inability to see when looking through a rear view or side mirror. Truckers must always be aware of their blind spots while driving. Failing to do so can result in serious injuries. Distracted driving. It's hard not to get distracted on the road when driving for 11 hours a day. Common distractions are eating while driving, looking at the GPS, texting and talking on the phone. Truck drivers should avoid texting and driving at all times. They should also consider investing in a headset to use when talking on the phone while driving. Weather conditions. When the weather changes, drivers need to adjust their speed and distance between other cars. Driving too fast and close in the rain or snow can result in a severe accident. There may be times when it's not safe to drive even after reducing the speed. Make sure to never drive when you feel uncertain of the weather conditions. This blog was brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net.
Truckers Life Radio from TFC Global with your host, Ron Frazier, every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. On the show, Ron interviews guests to help inform professional drivers just like you about the importance of things like human trafficking to sex addiction to how to overcome the impossible odds on the way to success. Every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Welcome back to the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.live. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly, and we're talking with Elizabeth Barna from Trucking Moves America Forward. Elizabeth, this poll we were discussing in the previous segment, we didn't go into a lot of detail, but as I expressed, I'm excited because this shows respect at an all-time high for the trucking industry as well as the drivers. What other detail do you have from that poll?
Sure. We've been doing this poll for the past 8 years and asking the same questions. And so we really felt good about the responses and the results for this one. 97% of Americans, according to the poll, believe that the trucking industry plays a very important role in the country's economy. And nearly 3/4 rate the industry's safety record as excellent or good, which, 15, 20 years ago, that would not be, the results at all. And I do think some of that is because we talk about what it takes to become a truck driver. The ongoing safety training and all of the, as you would say, like hoops to get your CDL, but to maintain it too.
Yeah.
For truck drivers, the 96% of Americans believe they are essential to keeping the country's economy moving. And I think, Shelley, we were talking offline that is a lot of that is probably because of the pandemic when you couldn't get your toilet paper, but also in the beginning of the year and still lingering a bit is all of the supply chain issues. And so I believe the country actually woke up and realized that if you don't have a truck driver delivering it, you're not going to get it. And so I think that really did raise awareness of the industry and how important of a role we do play. 85% of those polled consider truck drivers to be professionals, which is, I think, an incredible number.
It is.
78% believe that truck drivers have higher standards for safety than other drivers, which also I think is a big improvement to prior polls.
And this is very good. And anyone who knows a driver, they know they have higher standards for safety. And they don't like not being in front of the wheel either. They don't make good passengers. I can profess to that. I've been at the helm before, and it's like,
I agree with that.
Yeah, they prefer to be behind the wheel, and they do have really high safety standards. But they have to be. They're out there. Let's face it. They drive more miles than anyone could have imagined in a lifetime. They can do that in just the course of a couple of years. So their experience.
Right. And one accident for them either cost them money or cost them their job. And so, this is a job for them. It's not like they're just, jumping in the truck and running down to the local 7-Eleven to pick up a gallon of milk. This is their livelihood. And so they take it very seriously, as they should, but also they want to be able to get home to their family safely, with family and friends, and they want everybody on the highway too as well. And so I'm just glad that the country is finally recognizing how safe they are and how important they are.
And a lot of drivers, and I'm not sure everyone knows this, I believe that they're trained in CPR, and a lot of them are some of the first at the scene of an accident to assist.
Absolutely. Yeah. They are a first responder. Most of the time they are the first at the accident, and they risk their lives to, jump out of their cab and go to the overturned car or motorcycle and help grab somebody out of a critical situation. A lot of them also on their free time are volunteer firefighters or volunteer EMS. So they really are serving our country in every bit of the way. Many are, retired military. So
yes, they are.
They're just, in general, like the top of people. And we can't thank them enough for what they do.
Absolutely. The trucking industry has the highest percentage, I think, of veterans.
I believe that's correct. Yeah. Yes. Yes. One of the other takeaway points from the poll was that 78% of Americans say that truck drivers make a fair living. An identical percentage estimate that they make at least $50,000 a year. So, they're not too far off, but at least they understand what a hard job it is, and understand a little bit more about trucking than they did, in previous polls.
And that's good. Well, the average person, I don't think that could withstand the rigors of a long haul trucker.
Right.
It's hard. It's strenuous. It's stressful, and it's a long, long day.
It is. And I think one of the other things that has been positive over the past few years, we've been asking everybody to go out there and tell their story, is people in all different aspects of trucking are talking. So whether it's dispatch or it's a technician or a driver, and some of them are talking about the different roles drivers can play or the different opportunities for drivers. So you can be an over-the-road driver. You can also be a regional, or you can be home every other night. You can be a P&D, so there's a lot of different opportunities. And I think that also helps, and these polling results certainly help in trying to recruit younger folks into the industry.
Absolutely. And they need to have that. And I know that there have been a lot of drivers and members of the industry that go out to the schools to offer this as a vocation for students who may not be college bound, and encourage them, because I'm not sure it's always talked about.
It's not. And the Wall Street Journal, I don't know, probably 8 months ago, did a great article that said, why go to college and incur all that debt if you can go into, a trade. And so we've really been using that article to promote that when we go to high schools. Not everybody's cut out for college, and folks don't know what they want to do. But if you can get into the trucking industry out of high school, and whether that's, loading on the dock or driving intrastate, you certainly can start making good money. We've got a younger driver that I know that bought his first house recently, and he's 23 years old. And he said, if I'd gone to college, I'd be still living in a dorm right now. And so I think that's important too, to really encourage those that may not want to go to college and really not know what they want to do, to look at trucking. One of the things that is tough, and now we've got the younger driver program, but you would get out of high school and you couldn't start driving a truck unless you stayed within state. And now in some states in California that works, but Rhode Island not so much. But they'd go into construction, and then how do you get them back from construction into trucking when they might not be home every night? Construction's a hard job. Trucking is too. So if we can start pulling folks out of high school into the trucking industry, I think that's really positive. And I think it's a great livelihood and a great career for many.
It is. And then they can expand their horizons. A lot of drivers start working for a company, and then they eventually become owner-operators and then start their own trucking companies.
Absolutely. Everybody wants to live that American dream.
Yeah.
Part of the poll too is they generally have heard people say more positive than negative things about the industry. Like they keep the stores stocked. They're critical for the success of the country. They keep the country moving. But then, on the negative side, they talk about the driver shortage or strikes, or the concern that drivers are underpaid. And we certainly saw pay increases in many instances, during the pandemic and across the board. So let's hope that, the drivers are feeling more appreciated that way.
Everyone can feel appreciated when they have a bigger wallet. No doubt about that.
Right. Exactly. One of the things that I found interesting with the polling too was that as positive as the trucking industry was with the the folks we polled, few voters believe that the mainstream media accurately portrays the industry. Instead, they think that the media really paints a more negative picture of the industry than reality. And, I think that has a lot to do also with the way people perceive us, is the way the media portrays us.
Well, with the media, as we've all heard the slogan, if it bleeds, it leads. They tend to have a negative slant on things, and so they can get more viewership.
Absolutely.
And it is not an accurate portrayal of an industry, especially.
Right. And I think you're absolutely right. One of the things that we encourage folks to do is also, especially companies, invite the media to, your safety banquets, or invite the media to come and see what your terminal is all about, meet a driver. Go for a ride along, get to know the people at that terminal or the driver as a person. I can't tell you how many times we've done media ride alongs where the story's already written. The reporter comes and they're, ready to write, close the computer and send story, but they've been told to get in the truck and do a ride along. Come out of that truck with a completely different perspective. They get to know the driver, that they're a real person. They're not a robot, that they've got a family, or they care about the people on the road. They get to see what it's like to be a truck driver, and all the four-wheelers or two-wheelers out there, how it's hard to share the road with them, especially when the driver is much more safe. And they also get to see all the, distracted driving that goes on.
Yes.
So they jump out of the cab and they're like, oh my gosh, with a big smile on their face, like they had the time of their life. But they get to see what our drivers do every day.
Which is so essential. I think that the reporters need to do that, as well as politicians. When they're making regulations, they need to do a lot of ride-alongs to get a real feel for what it's about. I think the drivers would agree with that too.
Oh, I think you're right. I mean, politicians make decisions on rules and regulations and laws that affect our industry, and they may not have even reached out or even know what the industry is. So the more that we can educate the media, hopefully the better stories and more accurate stories we get, and the more we can educate the politicians, the better rules and regulations that can come from it. We do a lot of events at ATA where we have our state associations and our membership come in and go up and visit their members of Congress. And I can't tell you how many times we'll get a call back to say, hey, can you hook me up with that lady that came in to talk about the company that she owns? There's a piece of legislation and I just want to get her view on it before I vote.
Oh, cool.
And that's what it's all about, is education, education, education.
Yep. And bravo that you're doing that. No doubt about it. We have to go to break here, Elizabeth. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly. You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show on tncradio.live. We're talking with Elizabeth Barna from Trucking Moves America Forward. We've got a lot more great details from this really positive poll, so stay tuned for more coming up.
This blog on tncradio.live is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. 5 ways to handle sickness on the road as a truck driver. Being sick on the road is one of the worst situations a truck driver could be in. As if being sick isn't bad enough, sickness on the road is 10 times worse. If you're sick at work, you can simply go home for the day and rest. This isn't the case for truck drivers. Truck drivers are hundreds and sometimes thousands of miles from their home. When a truck driver gets sick, it affects their ability to deliver their load on time. They also lose money while trying to recover. As a trucker, it's important to know how to handle sickness on the road. Here are 5 tips for you. Stay hydrated. Drinking water and electrolytes have a ton of benefits while you're sick. Water helps replace the fluids lost while loosening up mucus. Hot liquids also have benefits as well. The steam from hot liquids helps relieve congestion and soothe a sore throat. Stay clear of sugary drinks. They'll dehydrate you. Rest. Sometimes the best thing you can do while being sick is rest. Your health's more important than getting a load delivered on time. Plus, it can be dangerous to drive while you're sick. Take a day or two to rest and get better. Continuing to work while being sick will only drag out the healing time. Take medicine. If you start to feel sick, get medicine as soon as possible. Vitamin C supplements are great immune boosters. Also, avoid eating unhealthy, greasy foods. Eating properly keeps you healthy and boosts your immune system. If you're already sick, check to see which over-the-counter medicine would help the most. Talk to your dispatch. Let dispatch know what's going on. If you're sick, you may not be able to perform your daily duties, or you may not be able to drive at all. Don't rush recovery time. Rushing recovery time can result in re-injuring yourself. Truck drivers know that if their truck's parked, then they're not making money. It's better to take a week off to recover than try to work when you're not ready and further injuring yourself. This blog on tncradio.live was brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net.
Hello, everybody. This is Todd Dewey from Ice Road Truckers on the History Channel, and I love to listen to tncradio.live.
Welcome back to the Truckers Network radio show on TNCradio.live. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly, and we're talking with Elizabeth Barna from Trucking Moves America Forward. They have a really positive poll of people who were surveyed about the trucking industry. You know, Elizabeth, I don't think the positive perception of trucking has been this high since C.W. McCall and the song Convoy made a huge hit and made trucking popular in the late 70s.
I think you're absolutely right. Having these great results, which is just wonderful that, 97% of America believes that truck drivers play a very important role in the economy is wonderful. And 87%, have a favorable opinion. One of the questions in the poll was, who do you find as essential or critical? Essential became that word during the pandemic. Are you an essential worker? And so the results came in that healthcare workers, they found, were 96% essential. Grocery store workers, 89%, truck drivers, 88%, and then energy industry workers, 86%. And then it goes on down from there. But we were just talking offline, and we were saying it's funny that grocery store workers are above truck drivers because without trucks and truck drivers, you wouldn't have anything in your grocery store.
That's very
but
true.
those are still really great numbers to be in the top 3 of what folks think are essential workers.
That is excellent. And, well, I can see why the public would say the grocery store worker, but there are also people out there that don't understand that hamburger doesn't start out that way.
That's right.
Right.
No, you're absolutely right. That's the final mile is the truck to the grocery store, I guess the grocery store to your house. But yeah.
Elizabeth, when was the poll conducted?
It was in September, end of September of this year.
Okay. So that's
just a few months ago.
Yeah, so that's long after the shenanigans up in Canada, which I know polarized a lot of people, and really, as negative as it was depicted in the media, really put a spotlight on the industry and in a way that people went, well, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. And
I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, without getting into the politics of all that, because that's not what we do here. That's just, I was wondering if that could have had an impact on this poll, but probably not, given that, that was out of the news cycle for a while. But then again, people saw that, and I think were shocked by the way the drivers were treated as a part of all of that.
I agree with you. I think also, it's been over a year or a year and a half where people have been getting back. I mean, I know this was our, we came back in May of last year with in-person meetings. So really close to almost 2 years. And so I think the pandemic played a big part in it when people realized they couldn't get their toilet paper or what they needed. And then we had the supply chain issues that still linger. But I think that we're finally resonating with the American people about how important our industry is and how important the drivers are. And again, I said it earlier in the show, but it's about everybody telling their story, everybody highlighting the positives of the trucking industry, the people in the industry, and what a difference the industry makes.
Yes.
It seems like, though, that there are a lot of drivers who feel like, well, I'm not sure they would believe some of the stuff in this poll simply because they don't feel like they're being treated as well as they were there for a while.
You could be very right on that. And again, I guess the answer there is just keep doing what you're doing.
Right.
And representing yourself with the image that you want. You know, the more professional those drivers are and the rest of the industry out there, the better perception people have. But I think a lot of it is getting to know people, and really, you know, understanding what a tough job the trucking industry is.
Well, I'm just saying they should take heart that this says something maybe different than what they're feeling. Is that people do have a lot more respect for them and think a lot more of them than maybe what they thought. And, you know, it's easy when you're just doing your day-to-day stuff to forget that. And I think this is just fantastic news across the board.
It is.
Well, and I think that the kids in the country these days, too, are now, again, looking at truck drivers as heroes. Which is very, very important. That used to be way back when, you know, our highway heroes, and then would have got away from all of that in the early 80s. But I think that's coming back now. And for kids to look up to and respect truck drivers, I think is just awesome.
And who hasn't done the arm pump as a kid?
I know. We still do it.
Yeah.
And now they even have a TV commercial about it, which I thought was kind of wild. Have you seen that? Just started a couple of weeks ago?
Yes, I have. I think that's awesome. Tom
Bodette has a special spot for Motel 6 just for it, just for drivers.
Just for that.
Yeah. I interviewed him, as a matter of fact. He drove a semi briefly.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah.
One of the other cool things that came out of the poll was that 87% of those polled felt that the trucking industry was better than the railroad or the airline. And trucking was 87%, railroad 80%, and airline 66%, had a much more favorable view of the trucking industry.
Do we know why? Was there any essay that went with that would say because of this or that?
No, we just asked them what their view, if they had a positive image of whatever, of the three industries, and trucking came out on top.
Okay, so we can speculate a little bit that we've all heard about all the issues on airplane. I mean, and lots of issues where people weren't able to take their flight and then didn't get their money.
Right.
Right. And a lot of that, where the government's really cracking down on them right now. And maybe that's where a lot of that negativity towards the airlines coming from. Because I think we all agree that a lot of flight attendants put up with some stuff they should have not have had to put up with during the pandemic stuff. I mean, I think flight
attendants in general have a really tough job. I think anybody that works in the airline industry that has to deal with unsatisfied customers, not unlike the, trucking industry when you get to, somewhere to unload and you're detained. I think it's any type of service job is very hard these days.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the image of the industry also, we talked about that high number, 87% of voters. But that is it's strong across all age groups, which I think was interesting. Partisan lines. It's not a Democrat or a Republican issue. Across all ethnic, groups and education levels. And then also across all regions of the country. The Northeast was 88%, Midwest 87%, South 89%, and the West Coast 85%. And so I think, it's not just a pocket of the country, it's across the whole country. Everybody felt that way.
I don't think a lot of industries can say that
I don't
there's
think
that
so
much
either.
of a rally in unification.
And then they also came back to say that 69% feel that trucking moves the most freight in the country, and that was compared to 49% 8 years ago.
Okay.
So
people are thinking this is
people
excellent.
are thinking,
Yes,
which is great. Some of the good things they said about the industry is without them, our shelves would be empty. They're the backbone of America. They're essential. They are busting their butts to keep the goods moving. They work very hard to transport goods across country in spite of driver shortage. They're of vital importance to the world. Without them, I said that already. They're faithful, they're dependable, they're hardworking. This one I love. They're the lifeblood of the supply chain within the United States. And then probably my favorite, those men and women are heroes.
that is good. This is a wonderful poll.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to feature this, because the drivers need to hear this.
I think
this is
so
how people
too.
feel. Yeah.
I think some of the negative that came from them was, they said that trucker caravan heading to DC to disrupt traffic and protest. That was this past summer.
Mm-hmm.
The fuel they use is not good for the environment, mostly in California with the restrictions placed on the trucks they are using. Not enough workers, long hours. They're never able to be home with their families. They have a bad attitude about sharing the road with cars, mostly because people suck at driving cars. That was
yeah.
So they get it.
They have to deal with the amateur hour all the time.
Oh my gosh, yes.
They got the patience of Job, which I can't say that I would have that kind of patience. I mean, they have to just take a deep breath and proceed, and they deal with this every day.
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm. I do think probably besides the image of the industry, I think one of the highlights for me was that, they feel like our safety record is excellent and it's the best it's ever been. And I credit the drivers and the companies for that. That's something they strive for every day. They work hard for, and I really do think that is really tells all of the good work that this industry is doing.
It really does. We have to go to break, Elizabeth, but I'm really enjoying featuring all of these stats here. You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.live. We're talking about the latest poll from Trucking Moves America Forward. Really positive results for our truck drivers out there and the trucking industry as a whole. Stay tuned for more right here on TNCRadio.live.
This infoblog on tncradio.live is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. 6 things to consider before starting your career in trucking. Truck drivers are often referred to as the backbone of America. They haul roughly 70% of America's freight. Nearly every good consumed in the United States has been shipped by a truck. Right now, the demand for truck drivers is higher than ever. The growing truck driver shortage in America is a topic of concern and has been for the past 4 years. The United States is in dire need of people to start driving trucks. Are you considering becoming a truck driver, but not quite sure if it's the career path for you? Here are 6 things potential truck drivers need to know before starting their career in the trucking industry. Know your why. Why do I want to become a truck driver? Is one of the first questions you should ask yourself before starting your career in trucking. Knowing and understanding your why is important so that you make sure that trucking is something you'll enjoy. Nothing is more draining than working in a career field that you're not passionate about and excited about. Truck drivers are already more likely to struggle with mental health problems because of the trucking lifestyle. So to avoid dreading your trucking career, ask yourself, why do I want to be a truck driver? Long work hours. It's obvious that truck drivers spend a majority of their workday in the driver's seat, but many new drivers don't realize how hard it can be sitting for long periods. Drivers spend hours upon hours sitting down. This can result in leg, back, and neck pain. If you're the type of person who cannot handle sitting down for several hours at a time, then truck driving's not for you. Another thing to consider is how long a typical workday is for a truck driver. Drivers are legally allowed to work 14 hours a day, but are limited to 11 hours of driving time. They must take a mandatory 30-minute break by the 8th hour of duty. Following the long workday, drivers must have 10 hours of off-duty time. In a work week, drivers cannot exceed more than 60 hours of work or 70 hours over 8 days. Failure to follow these HOS rules can result in being shut down, fines, and lower carrier safety ratings. A new lifestyle. There's not a career quite like trucking. It's nothing like your typical 9 to 5 Monday through Friday job. It's long hours, days, and most times weeks away from home. Truck drivers often experience loneliness, depression, and anxiety. If you're someone who's used to working with many people, then truck driving will be a shock. Drivers will go days or weeks without seeing their loved ones, and it can really take a toll on truckers, especially those who are new. Adjusting to this lifestyle can be challenging at first, but once you do, you can live a rewarding life as a truck driver. Getting seat time. The more experience you have as a truck driver, the better. With more experience, you'll land better truck driving jobs and better pay. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, truck drivers earn an average of over $40,000 a year. Yet, many trucking companies advertise higher rates of pay for experienced drivers. Over time, you can negotiate a higher rate per mile. Your relationships will suffer. It doesn't matter if you're on the road or at home. Make time for family. Make it a priority to talk to someone in your family once a day. It can be tough for truckers, especially long-haul truck drivers, to maintain relationships with their families due to the trucking lifestyle. Keeping in contact with your loved ones will help life on the road be less lonely. Lack of sleep. Getting the recommended amount of sleep each night is a rare thing for truckers. Although sleep may be difficult for truckers because of the uncomfortable way of living, it's essential to their well-being and safety. Make it a priority to get good sleep and make a sleep schedule. Set an alarm for a certain time and turn off all electronics and get your much-needed sleep. Not getting enough sleep makes life on the road miserable. Although there may seem like many downsides, truck driving can be a very rewarding and exciting career. As a truck driver, you have freedom on the open road and the chance to see America's most beautiful places. For information on trucking, be sure to check out the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net.
Ready for the power of positive and something that will put you back to a time you wanted to last forever? Music is the ultimate time machine. What was your favorite time? Do you want to go back there? LTD Radio features the songs of the 70s, 80s, and 90s that will transport you to a happier time. It'll make you smile and brighten your day. We could all use that about now. TNCRadio.live is proud to carry the great music of LTD Radio. Welcome back to the Truckers Network Radio Show on TNCRadio.live. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly, and we've been talking with Elizabeth Barna from Trucking Moves America Forward about a recent poll that reports public perception at an all-time high for trucking. I like I said before, this is terrific, and I would really like to see that momentum continue. Elizabeth, you said part of that, keeping that up, is maybe for drivers to tell their stories, to keep up this positive perspective in the public's mind's eye, if you will.
Absolutely. Thanks, Shelley. We talked about earlier on the show, too, that the more somebody knows somebody in the trucking industry, the much better perception they have. And so if everybody got out there and started talking to their business leaders, their policymakers, the media, but even their next door neighbor, the much better perception the industry would have. And I really do think that's what's happened over the past 8 years is we have been pushing that tell your story theme. We've been highlighting drivers and folks in the industry, on social media. We've been putting positive stories through, TMAF on social media, and we're getting a great following. I mean, one of the one of the social media posts we did just a couple of days ago, said Black Friday and Cyber Monday, they're sure to be delivered by a trucker. So trying to get people to think like, you're going to order online, but how does it get to your doorstep? I mean, it comes from a warehouse, so it's on a truck. Somehow that product got to the warehouse to get on another truck to go to your house. So, Thanksgiving wouldn't be the same, wouldn't be delivered if you didn't have trucks, and trying to get people to think a little bit that way and talk about how important the industry is. But if everybody just talked to a few people or even just, for those that have kids or grandkids or next door neighbors that have kids, ask to go to their school and talk about safety on the highways or talk about careers in the industry. Yeah. We were talking earlier, not everybody's cut out for college. Not everybody wants a desk job. So being able to see the country from your windshield, I think, is a pretty cool way to do it.
That's a great office view. How many people in executive offices can see as much as drivers do?
Not anybody. Yeah. And the view keeps changing. So, which is even better. I met recently a woman who had raised 4 children, is an empty nester now. And she went and got her CDL and she's driving with her husband and they're having a ball. They're going, they own their own truck and they pick up the freight when they want to and they vacation when they want to or stop for, a weekend and see friends. And so they're having a great time. So I think getting the message out that trucking, there's something for everybody in trucking. May not want to be an over-the-road driver. You may not want to work that hard or be away from your family. There may be another job in the trucking industry, whether it's a driver or a technician, even the security guard at a terminal. It takes everybody in the industry to deliver and to deliver safely.
Sure it does. Where can people reach out if they want to get involved with Trucking Moves America Forward?
Sure. It's www.truckingmovesamerica, all one word.com. Mm-hmm. And we've got a call out right now for folks to tell us what they've been doing for charity this year. And at the end of every year, we put out a press release and highlight some of those stories because we do want people to understand that the trucking industry is as generous as they are.
It really is.
They're involved in, their communities. That was one part of the poll that was a little bit shocking to me is that there was very few, and I'm trying to pull up the number right now, but said they didn't feel as though they weren't sure if the industry was involved in the community, and it was like 30%. And I was just trying to pull that up, but I'm not sure where that is.
Well, see, that's where maybe informing the media would be good because there are so many trucking nonprofits out there. People don't really understand how generous drivers really are.
Oh, how generous they are with not just their time, but their money. Yeah. Look at it. Look at the natural disasters. I can't tell you how many drivers just, say, I'll deliver anything you need me, or if you've got a truck, I'll drive it, let me get in there and help. And so I think that's really important. The trucking industry is so involved in communities and so are the truck drivers. And I do think that, we need to continue that story as well.
That's where awareness comes in. And like I was saying when we were off air, I think Americans have a tendency to have a short memory, out of sight, out of mind. So keeping it at the forefront and all the positive messages, people will continue to appreciate, which they should do, because without drivers, this economy doesn't roll.
Keep it. You're absolutely right. Keep it front and center. And anytime you can do a ride along, or you can invite somebody to your terminal, or to just even, put a letter to the editor in your paper about how important the trucking industry is and the truck driver is, I think it is so helpful in really improving the image of the industry. Trucking is a grassroots. It really is. I mean, we touch everybody, and as we said, in every congressional district and every community. And so the more that we can leverage our stories to the local papers and to the local politicians, that all funnels up to the top.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for being with us. This has been very informative and terrific. I appreciate it. Thank you for listening to another great interview on TNCRadio.live and the Truckers Network Radio Show. All of the material you hear on TNCRadio.live on our website, our broadcasts, or our podcasts are copyrighted. There can be no distribution without the express consent of TNCRadio.live and its partners. For inquiries, write us at info@tncradio.live. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast. It's free.